I'm Jo Wright, and this is the Coaching Culture podcast, where we discuss how to make work better. So, welcome to the Coaching Culture podcast. My name is Jo Wright, and today I am absolutely delighted and slightly starstruck to be joined by one of the most sought after speakers in the world. Apparently, only number 3 to Sir Richard Branson and Sir Ranulph Fiennes, but somebody who I met probably over 10 years ago now and was absolutely blown away by, and continues to inspire me all the time through books, words, content on LinkedIn. Everything I see and hear just speaks my language. So let me welcome the wonderful and fabulous, slightly starstruck by Jo, Jamil Qureshi.
Hi, you're very kind. Well,
say that again, Jamil.
Well.
Very well, thank you. I just can't believe that I'm sat here now interviewing you as like you do trot around the globe. We see all the time on LinkedIn on how much you are sought after for the words that you have to share with people, and also how successful you've been in your career. And today our conversation is literally going to be about a little bit about your story, but also the difference that high performing teams, how you get to building high performing teams in organizations. So yes, I'm very well. More importantly, how are you?
I know thank you. I'm on holiday, so I'm fine.
Oh,
so yes, so I try and take August off really. So it's been quite nice, and I haven't done much at all. So I feel nice and relaxed for going back into that September to November, which is always a really busy period.
Oh, you're always busy because we see the pictures on LinkedIn, and the two things we see on LinkedIn, Jamil, are your pictures globe trotting or the funniest polls, the most entertaining polls on LinkedIn. You've got to take the prize for that.
I can never take LinkedIn seriously. That's my problem. So I think I was actually looking through LinkedIn. I was actually quite annoyed. I was quite annoyed by the coverage, by the content. Sorry. So so I think I spend a lot of time on planes and things, as you know, and so therefore I get bored. And then when I get bored, the worst thing I could possibly do is have access to LinkedIn.
Oh.
So that's how that content finds its way there.
the disruptive LinkedIner, that's what you are. Well, in terms of today, I mean, you know, our listeners will be really interested to understand about building high performing teams. You're an expert in the psychology of high performing teams, and your career is phenomenal, isn't it? Your successes, the stripes that you've gathered on the shoulder along the way are just amazing in terms of who you've worked with in your career, whether that's sports, whether in sports or in business. So rather than me share your story, if you want to share a little bit of your story, because I think it's fascinating and highly inspirational. So Jamil, tell us a bit more about you.
Thank you, very kind. They're more scars than stripes, you'll find. But
they look the same. They look the same.
I studied business and marketing. That's what I did. So I originally did business and marketing. I used to play lots of cricket, and when I was playing cricket, I got interested in psychology because I was quite a good cricketer.
Yeah.
And then people said to me that you're a wasted talent because your mindset is so bad. So technically I was good, but mentally I was very poor. And so you need to see a psychologist. So I saw a psychologist and actually got me into psychology. So I was quite fascinated by a psychologist and psychology. And so that became my interest. So although I studied business and marketing, I've always had an interest in psychology. And then I came to psychology quite late. So I only studied it, and became serious about it, much later. It was never my chosen career. And I fell into it through lots of good fortune. So it was conversations in pubs and bumping into people and saying, yes, I'll give it a go. That led me into a world of professional sport at a really high level. And I was really lucky because the people I started working with were literally some of the best sports people in the world. And they're the first people I worked with. So I was really, really lucky. And it was pure luck.
Was it really luck? It really luck?
Well, yeah, I guess it honestly was. It was. The only thing I'll say, because there's no business strategy, there's no business plan or anything like that. I chose to sort of follow my sort of, I chased my passion more than my pension. I thought, I'm interested in psychology, so I'm going to say yes to anything in psychology. It's a bit like, I don't know if you've seen the movie Yes Man.
Yeah.
But people said to me, can you do this? And I go, yes, and then buy some books. would you get involved in that? And I'd say, yeah. So I kissed some frogs. I worked with some players, I didn't really want to work with. I did some work I didn't really want to do. But if it was involved in psychology, I was learning and meeting people. So so I put a real energy, passion, enthusiasm behind what I liked, and then from there, I guess things revealed themselves to me. I got involved in things that I was more. I decided were more right for me, and from there it just sort of worked.
Because I remember seeing you, I genuinely, I do lose track of time and careers, but it was probably, I don't know, I'm making it up, 10 years ago, and meeting you for the very first time. And then there was a few times when our paths have crossed, and then I just seem you've just got more famous through your super successes in psychology, linked to psychology. And I totally resonate with the psychology, the interest in psychology and the power of the mind. It's just, well, we've got a product called Mindset, because it's that, isn't it? It's absolutely mindset that can make all the difference. But go on, tell us about that.
Yeah, I think the difference between winners and losers is what goes on behind the eyes. I definitely do. But, particularly at an elite level, and that's elite level in business as well as in sport.
Yeah.
There's lots of people with the same talent, but how they maximise the talent is through their ability to think differently. So so it's not necessarily about thinking better. It's sometimes about thinking differently. So it's not necessarily what we know; it's how we think about what we know that allows us to be successful. And so it's always fascinated me, how you see people who have got some average talent who perform brilliantly, and some people incredibly talented who don't get the most out of their ability. And so, for me, it was always, the only way in which people change their doing is by changing their thinking. And so, the area for me really was, work on people's thinking, to change the way in which they feel or behave, when it comes to their chosen profession, be it a CEO or be it a golfer. And, I often, I sometimes say it now, actually, in talks and things, that, the difference between successful people and unsuccessful people, is that successful people are prepared to do what unsuccessful people are not. And it's usually just to choose a given attitude at a time when it would have been easier not to. And you see that quite often in sport and in business.
I remember seeing you on your flip chart, and it said think, feel, do, and it was the first time I'd ever come across that. And ever since, it's everything now. It's everything, because change your thoughts, you change your feelings and your behaviours that follow on. And it's such a fascinating topic. And do you think organisations are waking up to the psychology behind high performance?
Yeah, I think they are. Yeah, absolutely. So I think in sport and in business, it's become more accepted. So hence the success of your business is that, people believe in coaching. So it's certainly an area where people realise that the competitive edge isn't necessarily through new technologies, or through better IT systems or processes or mechanics. It's actually through culture. People can replicate your products, they can replicate your services, replicate your office, they can't replicate your culture. And the culture is how people think, feel, interact, how they come together to achieve something which is bigger and better than what they would do on their own. So, I'm certainly seeing a change and a shift in the fact that, people believe that it's not just about training, it's about coaching, and you'll know the difference between the two. And particularly peer coaching. I'm seeing lots of organizations now who are trying to create a culture, where they realize that peer anything works, peer recognition, peer challenge, peer culture, peer coaching. So, I think that handing responsibility, to people and teams to develop themselves and each other is certainly something where I'm seeing more of.
Definitely, and that totally resonates, obviously, with myself and our business. And we're hearing a lot more about peer coaching and team coaching, rather than lots of individuals running around kind of being a little bit better. Actually, the power is in the team, and multiple teams, which equals the culture. So talk to me a little bit more about that, so that successes I think your successes are phenomenal. Your successes in building individuals, but also building teams, because you have, haven't you?
I've worked with some teams before.
Yeah.
so,
Yes.
so I think
Lots of them.
it's really funny because I'm very lucky because I work with such a variety of teams,
Yeah.
and some teams are incredibly high performing. So I work with LA Lakers, New York Knicks, NASA. They're high performing teams anyway, and then some teams haven't been so high performing. So when I worked in the Premiership, I worked with 3 clubs who were in the bottom 3 at Christmas.
Really?
So halfway through the season, they find themselves facing relegation. And so the techniques and needs and ways of working are very different. But I think if you're at the top of your game, or you're not doing so well, I always feel as though people can improve. So even if you're number 1 in the world, you could do better. And I think that again, it's creating new perspectives which allow people to understand new possibilities and new opportunities. So it's almost an easier job for me to work with someone who is 5th in the world and get them to number 1 in the world, rather than someone who's 300th in the world and who wants to keep their career. So therefore, they want to improve a bit. And that's actually harder, but it's actually more fulfilling to work with people who aren't doing so well, who then do average, than it is someone who is really good and then becomes great, because the raw talent is there anyway. And to make the tweaks to allow them to perform better is probably easier. When you've got to make a sea change in thinking, when you've got to get people creating vastly different perspectives on themselves, their talent, the environment which they work in, that can be a lot harder.
So I also remember back in the day on your flip chart, you did the one back in the day. This was quite
glad someone was listening, Jo.
I was listening. It's stuck in my mind. There's not many things that I can remember, but that was definitely one of the moments. And I remember you drawing your 1 degree.
Yeah, one degree.
Of change, and actually how far you can improve if you just improve that little bit every day, and now I hear more and more successful people talk about that in terms of, so whether they'd also been in the audience with you doing your flip chart, that it is about those small regular improvements that actually suddenly can transform a person over time.
Totally, and I think it's a nice way of thinking too, because it's one reason why New Year's resolutions don't work. Is that we look to make big change. So from tomorrow, I'm going to be different. I'm going to start doing this. I'm going to stop doing that. Starting things and stopping things is really hard work.
Yeah.
But to change something a little is probably where it's at, because it's easier to do. It's easier to commit to. It then forms habits. So we're not looking at a one-off change. We're looking at repeated change. Yeah. And habits are replicated behavior. Yeah. So if we can replicate the behavior and we commit to it because it's small, you could probably make bigger changes somewhere down the line. And I always think that, all great achievements are the result of many small achievements. Yeah. It's nice to have this big end goal, big purpose, whatever it might be. And that can work, and it does work. But ultimately, as pretty rubbish human beings, and we have our ups and downs. We have some days when we're motivated and we're not. We have days when we're busy with other things or distracted. So therefore, let's make the change easy, because then we're more likely to do it on a regular basis
and build that habit. And again, habits. It's interesting. So I don't feel I hear the word habit mentioned a lot in organizations. So I hear change, transformational change. It's always transformational.
Yeah.
I don't hear the word habits. I hear culture, I hear behaviors, I hear this, that, and that, but habits, is that something that people talk to you about in terms of how?
No, I agree with you. No one talks in terms of habits. But, it's funny because organizations, like human beings, have habits, don't they?
Absolutely.
There's a pattern, there's a way of working. And it is amazing. You think that 40% of what we do as human beings is done by habit alone.
Yeah. Totally.
So when you walk into an office, you'll see people drawing on a flip chart. You'll see someone speaking on the telephone. You'll see someone in a meeting. You'll see people doing all sorts of things. But almost half of what they will be doing will be done for the sole reason they did it yesterday.
Wow.
And it's amazing how you think that if you could disrupt the habits of an organization by 1% and get that down to 39%, whilst the competition still do 40% out of habit alone, the opportunity in that slight change may be substantial. And so you hear it all the time. People say, I always do my prospecting on a Friday morning. Why? It's the best time to do it. And why? Because I've always done it. Well, it works. I like to do this on a Monday morning when I first get in. Why? Because it's what I do. It works for me. And so because the world has changed, the pace of change, internally must match the pace of change externally for us to be future relevant. So an important question for ourselves, an important question for organizations is, are we changing as fast as the world around us? And that means questioning our habits more. Now, when I say 40% is done by habit, it doesn't mean that those 40% are all bad habits. Some of them are really good. But we'll never know if we don't interrogate it. We'll never know unless we step back and, think about it. And I sometimes think that if it ain't broke, break it. Let's take it apart and analyze and understand it to see if it's relevant for a world which is now changed.
Oh, I love that. If it ain't broke, break it. That sounds great. And, it makes me think a little bit of here at Coaching Culture. We're definitely disrupting the coaching market that was steeped in tradition, so traditional. And actually, it's like, we need to do something different. Something has to change. And I'll never forget the moment that my business partner said to me, could coaching be done digitally? And I was just about to go, no, absolutely not. It's a human thing. And then I went, let's have a think about that. Okay, yeah, actually. And that's what's been the success. It's something's changed. We've done something, we've disrupted a very traditional market just by saying, well, could it be done differently? Probably,
yes.
to be fair.
And so I guess that, a good way to break habits is to ask better questions, isn't it? Can it be done differently? And then why do we still do it like this? And then, why is it that these two teams never work together? Why is it we can sell this to customers, but they never buy that? And, and I think by asking these better questions, and I guess, Jo, what we're talking about here, listening to you, and my response to it is more about better levels of curiosity.
Yes.
Could this be done differently? And, could this be done quicker? And, what is more effective? And by asking some better questions in our organization at the moment, and better questions of our customers and colleagues, maybe as a community, a network and partnership, we can move forwards together in the most mutually beneficial way. And I think that organizations who are doing that really well at the moment are succeeding because everyone's been disrupted. I've talked about it for ages, but the last 2 years in particular, have catalyzed change in a new and different way. So we're better off not seeing our customers as consumers to be sold to, but more as, partners to be engaged with, and be that internal customers. I don't know if you work in L&D and HR, or external customers. And, is that let's engage, partner and network. Let's have better conversations together. It's a tailor's adage. Tailors who make clothes. It was all about measure twice, cut once.
Yeah.
Just to define the most relevant strategy, be it a coaching strategy or people strategy or marketing strategy.
Yep.
Let's have better conversations before we start to put pen to paper. That's just how old-fashioned I am, pen to paper. Rather than tap keyboard.
I'm sorry with my pencil.
Yeah, my pen. So I think that, by asking those questions and becoming more curious, interrogating the business and the environment differently, we may come to better decision making in a world which is now, changed in the way in which it has.
It's fascinating you say that. I mean, you're just obviously totally preaching here to the already very much converted in terms of what you're describing: questions, curiosity. For me, that's all building a coaching culture. It's kind of, listening. And I was just thinking this morning on the way in here, I was thinking, what is it? What is it that works for us? And it's absolutely about asking questions and listening, whether that's, like you said, to our team or whether it's to our community, coaching culture community, or customers. We don't spark up brand new ideas and thinking. We just listen to what they say and then go, well, that's what they're asking for. We need to create that. And it doesn't seem like rocket science, but perhaps not enough people or organizations are actually carefully listening. And
Yes.
it is that, isn't it? It's asking great questions and listening and then figuring out, well, that's what we mean. That's what solution needs to be for that.
Yeah. So I think customer-led innovation is very useful indeed, because customers are changing all the time to be relevant for their customers in the world in which they're working. So by finding out about their change, we can spot opportunity. So I think a greater level of interrogation allows us to come up with more relevant and more rifle shot ways of working, more so than scattergun or shotgun. So I think that observation as well as listening can be very useful depending upon the business that you're in. But I think bringing people closer than we ever have been, and here's the irony, isn't it, really, is that, we are now working like this in lots of cases, but we need to be more connected than we ever have been. And that level of connectivity is really about better conversations, more listening, more opportunity to be fluid in the way in which we work together, dynamic in the way in which we adjust processes and ways of working, to be most future relevant and future literate. So, we've been asked to sort of stay apart, there's never been a time that we need to be more connected.
More together, definitely. And in terms of the I know you work with so many organizations, and it would probably be unfair to say, who's doing this brilliantly. But I would love to understand kind of if there's either sectors or in where you think, they're getting this so right. They're asking questions internally. They're listening. They're having great quality conversations. They're building high-performing teams. And guess what? Hey, presto, look at them. They're a really successful organization because of the culture that they're developing. Are there any that instantly spring to mind without me going, pinpoint your favorite? I
think there's some tech companies who are getting it right at the moment.
Okay.
I think they're lucky because they're not legacy organizations.
Right.
If you look at banks and you look at utilities, they've been working in a particular way with a level of rigidity, operationally and structurally, for a long time. So it's very hard for them to make a change in the way in which they work. And whereas some tech organizations who had a greater level of fluidity and dynamism, the way in which they put together their teams, deployed resource to opportunity as it presented itself, the way in which they engage with their colleagues and customers, are finding it easier to be increasingly malleable. And so, I think that there's one tech company at the moment, who've really got it right. And there's a small company with 4,000 people. But one of the things that they're doing is they're not necessarily seeing themselves as a business with targets. They see themselves more as a community with a purpose.
Oh, wonderful.
And talented people who come together to express themselves to create something which is bigger and better than what they would do on their own. And so, when you think about a community, and communities will always outperform bureaucracies and hierarchies when it comes to maximizing human talent. Think about community, it's diverse teams, psychological safety, full discussion and disclosure, common purpose. It's all the stuff that, makes a team function, very well. So, and I think this thing about high diversity and high psychological safety is incredibly important in high performance at the moment.
Yes.
So, the more diverse we can be, the more different opinion and different discussion points and challenges we have. If you think about it, there's not one person at the moment who knows the answer. So we might as well speak to lots of people. And the more diverse their opinion and experience and thought, and expertise, the better. And then we can make sense of it together if we have a psychologically safe environment where people have that level of transparency and honesty. So I think that, two things. So there's some tech companies who are doing this, one in particular. who are becoming increasingly flexible in the way in which they mobilize their talent around a common purpose.
Brilliant.
And there's a couple of pharma companies, biotech companies that who are realizing that the demands on their organization are changing. And it's no longer about just simply having high technical expertise, knowing a lot. It's about how you take that knowledge, and make it relevant for a world which now has different demands when it comes to governance, economies, markets, that they are operating in. So I think the answer is always in the people. And I think that for all the best IT plans, marketing strategies, I've seen them gather dust on a shelf when people aren't engaged with them. The best way to get people to be mobilized around a purpose, is for them to co-create and co-author, for them to have that level of responsibility and ownership. And I think the companies who are, having that level of engagement, are the ones who are probably mobilizing their people best.
Clearly, you're making my heart sing, because this is exactly everything that, I suppose we preach. It's not an I at all, it's we preach, because it is all about that. It is about recognizing the value in the people. And, it's that. And it's actually your friend and mine, Casper Craven, who says, look after your people and the results will follow. It's that, isn't it? It's actually, it's
absolutely.
as simple as that. It's listen to your people. Times have changed so much, and it's making me, listening to you is making me realize that, you've had a great career, you have a great career, but actually you were probably ahead of your time when you were really driving the psychology message and interest. And that's why now you're making such a huge difference to organizations out there in the world, because you'd sussed out the secret sauce years ago. And it is about people, but it's also about what's going on in their heads that is making the difference. And you're now doing that. You're preaching that on a large scale, to be fair, around the world.
Yeah, I'm not sure I got the secret sauce, Jo. I'd be in a hot tub in Vegas or something like that. But,
well, that's next. That's next.
But do you know what? It's funny you say that, because when I sort of first started doing this, I was working with quite large organisations who, would honestly see it as tokenism.
Yes.
They would, yes, of course we do culture, and you're really important to becoming. Yeah, exactly right. It's a sheep dip approach to, we've told our people a strategy, and now we need them to engage with it. And there seems to be this this idea that certain values can be talked about and then they'd be embedded. There's a massive difference between commitment and compliance, getting people to do stuff. And so I've always talked about, the ideas that people support what they help to create. That the best way to get people to accept ideas is for them to believe it was their own, to have counsel and conversation, and I think COVID has probably accelerated this in a couple of ways. So people are realizing that culture is incredibly important, because it's changed overnight for them. Lots of people sat at home for 18 months alone, thinking about who they want to work with, who they want to work for, what career is, and what my leader is like, what do I want to go back to. And so, I think that organizations have changed, and the demands on those organizations have changed. It's a truism, that organizations need talented people more than talented people need organizations. So for us to become magnetic, for us to attract the best people and retain the best people, we need to organize ourselves differently and become more purposeful. I mean, the good news is that purpose maximization always drives profit maximization. The more that we can galvanize our people behind a worthy cause, the more discretionary effort. So that was really hard to get across before. I think now, that people's demands on their leaders and organizations have changed. I think that, more leaders and more organizations are getting the idea that we need to invest more seriously, in our culture. And I don't mean invest seriously from a financial perspective. I mean, invest as in think about it. And rather than doing the sheep dip tokenism bit, let's take this bloody seriously, because the war for talent is going to get bloodier.
Definitely. And I think one thing that is shifting, and it's possibly slowly, but it is shifting, is that actually culture used to be the responsibility of maybe one person on the board and their team. So whether it's director of culture or director of HR, whereas actually it's becoming more widely recognised. It's everybody's job, and it's not just one person. They may put some things in place to really enable and help the culture move forward, but it definitely is moving forward. I know that from the conversations I have all the time with the coaching culture community. We've actually moved here from values to culture codes, which are lots of little examples of who we are, rather than just going, here's five values on the wall and let's all remember them but never live them. We've actually captured, and we've done it together with us, all the team, and they're quite funny. I mean, they're memorable because we are quite fun. We're crackers actually at coaching culture, but in a fun way. We've got some little things that people are they need to be memorable, and we need to know what it means. We have one called "Don't Microwave Fish" in the office, and that is literally. I mean, obviously, if somebody did microwave fish, we would be a bit annoyed because it would stink everywhere out. But it's not about that. It's about think about your impact on other people.
Yeah.
And there's a video on YouTube that talks about don't mind, and it's just funny. And people, if they laugh at that, they're probably part of our crazy gang.
Yes.
It's things like that. We've also got ones with swear words in as well, which I won't share massively on the podcast. It's how we talk.
It's funny when I sometimes do talks to these quite large audiences about culture. I'll sometimes say, when I'm feeling mischievous, I'll sometimes say, can I ask a quick question?
Oh,
do you have values on a wall? And you'll see 200 or 300 hands go up. Say, yes, yeah, we do. I said, it's a quick question then. I said, how many of you drive into work every day thinking, I cannot wait to express my company values? And they all look down. They all look down at their toes, including the board in the front row. And then I say to them, I'm just being mischievous, don't worry about it. You probably don't do that because you're driving into work thinking, I cannot wait to increase shareholder value today. And they look even more embarrassed at that point.
Oh, that's hilarious. And
we don't go to work for those things, do we? We go to work to fulfill our own potential. We go to work to be happy. We go to work to make a difference. Go to work to, improve other people. And I think that, once we start to define ourselves not by our job titles, job roles, job description, by the metrics, but, define ourselves by the value we create for others and ourselves, I think that we'll probably think differently about how we spend our time.
It's interesting. I mean, I know I come to the office, and for me, it's I get lots of energy from. We've now got 1 day a week in the office and 4 days wherever you want to do your work. So, and I literally get my energy from being around other people. And I spoke to one of my team this morning. We've had a new starter this week. And I said, I do have to wear a few different hats. And she went, yeah. And she started naming the hats. And one of them was Fun Time Joe. And I was like, brilliant. Thanks for that. I need a cup with that on at the office. Fun Time Joe.
Yeah. And make sure you don't ever see that written on a toilet wall.
No, thanks for that. Definitely not. Definitely not. No, I think that's me just constantly taking the mickey out of myself and not taking stuff too seriously when actually sometimes it feels quite serious. And actually it's about having a laugh really more than having a laugh and fun, but kind of doing it in the right way, I guess. Yes. Hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
I think I think it's my approach to LinkedIn. Going back to my LinkedIn posts, I think that I don't know. I don't know whether it wins me business or loses me business. I think it probably loses me business. But I actually smile and laugh when I'm writing those things.
Exactly.
It makes me laugh anyway. So
and that's
important. 10 minutes on a train or a plane somewhere.
Your LinkedIn polls are legendary. I think they're legendary. There's nobody else who dares to put something so uncorporate out there on LinkedIn apart from you with your polls. But the thing is, I always engage in them. I always have an opinion.
Vote?
Yeah. Oh, I always vote on your polls. I think they're important because they get me thinking differently. And then I always think, what's going on in Jamil's world today?
Can you remember any?
Oh no, you've got some crazy ones. I think you did more in lockdown. I think there was definitely more polls.
Yeah, actually, it just depends whether I'm busy or not. Because believe it or not, actually, I can do it quite quickly. This is whatever comes into my head. But
Worryingly,
if I'm busy on a Friday, then I don't bother polling. I'll try and think of one for this Friday for you.
Yeah, think of a good one. Think of an entertaining one, and they're always really random, but I love them. So, Jamil, I have loved our conversation. You've totally, everything you're saying is just. Thankfully, organisations are moving that way, and I know it's harder for some than others, but organisations are moving in the direction. They're recognising what makes people tick a lot more, what makes teams tick, and what's therefore makes their culture and their organisation successful. But if you had one piece of advice for organisations listening today to think, Jamil's nugget of information that they need to do, Jamil's nugget, that not the silver bullet, but kind of what would be one thing that you would want organisations to sit up and really listen to?
Oh, that's a good one. I'd say people don't change because you tell them to. And, I still think that, we tell people to be different all the time. So we're constantly saying to people, we need to be more like this, or we need to do that more, or come on, guys, let's make a shift towards. And I think that we focus way too much on the doing, leadership frameworks, behaviours, the values on the wall, much more so than having really good conversations at high levels of challenge, good levels of curiosity, and better discussion. So I think that the takeaway is people don't change because you tell them to. So that means let's engage in a new and different way to change thinking, to enable people then to choose to change their doing.
Brilliant.
There's a big difference between commitment and compliance.
Yeah, that's two. You've now had two.
All right. It's the same principle, just worded different.
It's really interesting. It was back where I met you that I got interested in psychology, because I spotted, I was part of a change program, that people didn't just change when you told them to. No. And it's just, I was like, what's going on? Something special is happening here. What's happening? And it got me really interested in psychology behind what's going on in people's heads, and what are the conditions, and what are their thoughts, values and beliefs to enable to motivate people to change. So I love that final, and I love that in terms of commitment versus compliance. Compliance is definitely, it's probably easy for organisations, but commitment is way more valuable in terms of.
Can I give you another one just to finish?
Oh well, let's do three then. Let's do three.
One thing which I'm noticing more of as well, and I think organisations find it really hard, is that I always say that the immigrant sees things that the citizen is blind to. So to step outside of what you know is really important. And you probably talk about it lots to your clients about unlearning.
Yeah.
But when we've got a marketing problem, who do we go to? We go to marketing. We've got a HR problem, who do we go to? We go to HR. They're the people who gave you the problem in the first place. So we almost need to step outside of our current knowledge or current proposition to look at our business or look at our area differently. And so thinking like the outsider is increasingly important.
Love that.
Absolutely love 2.5. I think the other one was the same principle. I always repeat myself.
Well, that's good, because then people will remember exactly. Because maybe that's why I remember you on your flip chart 10 years ago, or however many years ago it was. You must have told me many times what it was, which is brilliant. Jamil, thank you so much. That was just phenomenal. And you know that everything you're saying just makes me go ping, because this is. And I think more and more people are waking up to this, which is wonderful. So thank you for your time today. I've really thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm sure so many of our listeners have too.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's a real pleasure. And it's lovely to see the success of your business. I remember fledgling conversations a long time ago. It's lovely to see how well you've done. Thank you so much.
I remember asking you many years ago whether I could go and do something like what you're doing, thinking there's no way. Now I'm thinking, how do I need to get hot tub in Vegas on some sort of vision board somewhere because, but yeah, no, you've been part of my inspiration and part of my journey. So thank you for that, Jamil. I really appreciate it. And thanks everybody for listening today. If you want to tune in for more fabulous guests like Jamil on our Coaching Culture podcast, please do. Thank you.